Holy shit, this game is brutal. This is definitely not for the faint of heart. Snuff is like a combination of Hitman, Manhunt, and Quake, with the jank level cranked up to 11. It's weird, it's wild, and it's good. For many, the jankiness may be a turnoff, but for those who are willing to embrace the jank, this game will give you one hell of a ride. It might be a ride that's ready to break at any given moment and wouldn't pass any sort of inspection, but it's a fun ride nonetheless. As soon as the story starts, you're greeted with a video of a man getting his head cut off with a chainsaw on this game's version of Live Leak. The camera pulls back from the screen to reveal your character. You play as Dexter, who seems to be doing his own investigation on what's going on. At least that's what I could put together from the news clippings on the wall. A cult known as the Corporation has been filming the torture and murder of innocent people, and after being hacked has had that footage leaked online. After getting off of the computer, you hear your doorbell ring. When you answer it, you receive a package containing a mysterious flash drive. Plugging it into your computer reveals a document, but it's all in gibberish, and immediately afterward, your phone starts to ring. A stranger tells you the corporation knows where you are, and you have 30 seconds until they arrive. He tells you need to escape out of the back of your house and into the forest, and after making it through the cornfield and into the forest, you meet Max, the guy on the phone who lets you into his secret bunker.
Get down. Well, I think that was very close to me, right? God damn it, Max. Close the door.
Now I made all that sound pretty simple, but actually what happened was, I got my knife stuck in a drawer, the flash drive got stuck in my hand for a minute, the back door wouldn't open, and when the front door opened I went out and was immediately killed. So this game does that thing like Call of Duty, where you get a quote when you die, but instead of them being from important politicians and war veterans, they're quotes from famous real-life serial killers. This game is really living up to its name. Going back to when you meet Max in his secret bunker, he reveals that he's been collecting information on the corporation, and has pinpointed the location of all the high-profile members. This is where the game really begins, as it's at this point you're introduced to the map board, which has 13 targets located on it. You can choose the targets in any order that you'd like. There's no benefit to selecting targets in a specific order, as nothing carries over from mission to mission. There's also no upgrades or anything like that. Each mission will see you starting from scratch. Most missions will start in a similar way, with you only having a knife, and usually the first enemy will have his back turned so you can sneak up and stab him to take his weapon, which will usually be a pistol. This is the standard. You'll notice that there's 3 tiers of guns. You'll usually start with a melee weapon, and then get a tier 1 gun, which will be a pistol or revolver, followed by a tier 2 gun, which will be a submachine gun or a shotgun, and then towards the later part of the mission you'll receive the tier 3 gun, which will be an assault rifle or sniper. Every so often the order of these weapons may be swapped, but more often than not, you'll end up working through all the weapon tiers as you progress through the mission. There's said to be 35 guns in the game, which definitely seems true as far as weapon models go, but I'd be lying if I said the guns from the same class don't all feel the same to use. Don't get me wrong, the guns are really fun to use. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that that's the game's best quality. They have great impact, especially with how grotesque the game can be. Headshots cause the heads to literally gib. It's both gross and incredibly satisfying, which is exactly what you'd want in a brutal game like this. I'm just saying that the guns in the same class all feel similar to each other. There doesn't seem to be a difference in accuracy or damage output. Despite having so many different weapon models, including 8 different types of pistol, none of them feel any different to use. The only real exception to the rule is the double barrel shotgun, which does feel notably different from the others, though that could also just come from the weapon only having 2 shots between reloads. Something I really enjoyed about the game was the mission structure and variety. Many missions feature open areas with a lot of room to work and multiple pathways you can use to progress. Even the more linear levels tend to offer different ways to progress to the same spot. Like this one here, where you can jump across a bunch of ceiling scaffolding to make it through the building while avoiding enemies on the factory floor. Or in here, where you can use a machete to cut down bamboo, revealing a hidden cave path. While a lot of missions have similarities, they each feature their own unique environment and sometimes even mechanics. There are 13 Hitman missions where you have to hunt down a target, and all of them have their own unique boss fight with specific gameplay mechanics. My absolute favorite mission in the game was the Japanese temple. It felt reminiscent of Tenshu on PS1 with its environmental design, and it's the only mission in the game that's completely melee focused. It feels like such a change of pace from the rest of the game, which sorely lacked any real melee opportunities. Sure, the melee combat feels janky, but it's so satisfying to cut someone's head or arm clean off with a katana. I was surprised by just how many body parts you could amputate. You can cut at the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, as well as separate the thigh and knee from the torso and each other. It's sick, but in a therapeutic way. Oh, that came off as creepy. I think the main reason the melee works so well is because it's always one hit kill on regular enemies. However, the boss fight in this mission is supposed to be a sword duel, but it doesn't really work due to him having a large health bar. His attacks go right through your blocks, so your only real option to kill him is to use throwing stars, which is a little disappointing. I think with some tweaking, this boss fight could actually be a really fun duel. Another small complaint I have is that there's no variety in the voice acting for the enemies. You'll hear a few of the same lines over and over again from the basic bad guys, but what makes it more jarring, especially in this mission, is that the cult members are from all around the world, but you hear American accents coming from Japanese ninjas.
You shouldn't be here. You are going down. Enemy spotted. You are going down.
In a way, it's honestly just kind of funny, and I totally understand why. Voice acting isn't cheap, and it'd likely get expensive to have voice lines recorded for each location in the game. Another highlight for me personally was the mission in Greenland, which sees you invading a cultist base on a snowy mountaintop. This is another mission that feels somewhat inspired by another game, this time being Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, more specifically the Cliffhanger mission. This isn't to say that all missions in this game have an outside source of inspiration, just that these are a couple of connections I drew. Both missions start with you climbing up a snowy mountain using an ice pick, then sneaking through an enemy base, before ending with a downhill snowmobile chase. If it wasn't for that last part, I probably wouldn't have made that connection, as an ice pick is a pretty normal tool to have when climbing up an icy mountain, but that snowmobile section of Cliffhanger is pretty iconic. Of course, it could have just been a coincidence, and it's just where my head went while playing the mission. With all that being said, it's no surprise I love this mission. I'm a slut for snowy levels. Something about snow in video games just makes me feel happy. Plus the snowmobile boss fight was a pretty damn cool concept. You have to chase down the boss while avoiding rocks and making jumps over huge holes in the ice. However, as with everything great in this game, there is a small problem, which might not even be an issue for you. Personally, I play PC with the mouse in my left hand, which means I have to rebind all the keys to suit my playstyle, including changing the movement to the arrow keys. Unfortunately, those key changes don't transfer over to the vehicle sections, as well as a couple other minor instances like exiting the crane controls on one mission. It's nothing too serious, but just an odd omission, and it's not obvious what's happening at first. If you're like me and use the arrow keys, just know that you have to use WASD to control vehicles, which doesn't come up too often anyway. Also, for some reason you can't bind the enter key at all, which really threw all of my controls out of whack. With a couple of great missions out of the way, I want to talk about the lowlight of this game. The absolute worst mission, Somalia. This mission has you chase down and board a cargo ship that's been taken over by Somalian pirates, which in concept should make for an awesome mission. However, the mission is so riddled with bugs that it ruins the whole thing. For starters, the first thing you need to do is pilot a small raft to catch up with the captured ship. While doing this, you must avoid rocks or your boat will take damage. On the first attempt, I died without hitting a rock at all, and on the second attempt I cleared the rocks fine, but when I finally caught up to the ship, I touched it, which caused my boat to get stuck in the middle of the water. I literally couldn't move. Finally, I boarded the ship, which I thought would be the end of my troubles, but it was far from it. There's an issue with this level. Checkpoints just don't work. If you die and go back to a checkpoint, you'll be floating in midair with nothing around you and you can't move. If you die at any point in the mission, you'll have to restart it, and the best part about restarting is rewatching the cutscene in the beginning because those aren't skippable. I believe this is a glitch that happens because the ship is moving the entire time you're on it, and it checkpoints you in the position you're currently in, but doesn't reset the ship's position when loading in the checkpoint. Hopefully that gets fixed in a patch because it kind of ruins the fun of the mission, which again I think would be one of the best missions in the game if it worked properly. I had to play it like a tactical shooter because I was worried I'd die and have to restart the entire mission all over again, and that just kind of takes away from the fun of the gameplay experience. The enemy AI in this game is a bit odd. They seem pretty oblivious to their surroundings. They won't notice you unless you're directly in their line of sight. This is really noticeable when you kill an enemy near another because they simply won't react to it. Them noticing a sound seems to be hit or miss too, but I think that's by design. They really only notice if you shoot an assault rifle, as those are much louder in the game. Some weapons sound like they're silenced despite not having a visible silencer. The sound design in general is pretty good though. Most guns sound powerful, but some ambient noise can be off. Like the crickets at night will literally burrow into your brain. Honestly though, I think the AI being dumb kind of balances out the fact that they can kill you pretty quickly. You can only survive 3 or 4 shots before you die on mortal difficulty, which is this game's equivalent of normal. This game does that old school thing of having a health bar, which means wounds don't just heal over time. Instead, in order to heal, you have to use painkillers. You start every mission with 3, and you can find more hidden throughout the mission. Something interesting they do with this is actually limit how many you can take in quick succession. If you take too many too quickly, your health will start to drain really quickly and you'll die of an overdose. You can tell how close you are to ODing by how many veins are visible on your heart. If enough time passes between taking painkillers, those veins will start to disappear, allowing you to start taking more. Another mechanic they implemented into the game to balance the combat is bullet time, which is built up by killing enemies and more so by getting headshots. Bullet time can really save your ass when there's a bunch of enemies rushing you, as without it, you'll most likely die. Now, to end this off, I'm going to do a glitch speed round where I just run through a list of the wild shit that happened to me while I was playing this game, because there's no way I could naturally tie in every odd experience I had. I'm sorry, I'm just not that good of a writer. On multiple occasions, I'd get a strange gravitational pull in a direction that would pull me despite taking my hands off the keyboard. I can't put this barrel down. Enemies would spawn inside of each other and cause the frame rate to drop significantly when they activated. Once upon dying and reloading at the beginning of a mission, I didn't spawn with a knife like I was supposed to, and my fist wouldn't hurt the enemy at all, so I had to restart and watch another unskippable cutscene. Multiple times upon reloading a checkpoint, certain objects would disappear, sometimes even enemies. Intangible door. I still can't put this barrel down. Hi Steve, floating table. And yet, I still recommend this game. This review may have seemed negative at times, but I was just stating the facts, and fun don't care about facts. Regardless of the constant jank, I had a fantastic time playing this, and at no point was I wishing it would end. Sure, at times I found the issues frustrating, but usually at worst they were inconvenient, and at best they were hilarious. The only thing that really needed nailed here to make it a good time was the gunplay, and that was executed perfectly. Plus, this was all made by one person. The amount of content and variety of locations and boss fights are insane. There's 13 Hitman missions and I only talked about 3 in depth. If any of those sounded fun to you, the game has plenty more where that came from for you to explore for yourself. This game isn't badly broken, it's not cur, it's charmingly janky, and that's a fine level of jank for me. Yes, this game could definitely use some fixes, but I think this game is worth playing even as is, if you can just embrace the jank.